Thank you. It's good to be back. Thank you for all you do.
It's good to have you back. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
I will say a good Erev Shabbos, an incredible schos Baruch Hashem to be here together. Another Erev Shabbos, Baruch Hashem to be able. Such an avoda in life, to be a shomer Erev Shabbos. You know, every Shabbos here in Shul we have Tomel at 6:30. 6:30. The entire avoda, people sometimes don't understand what's the avoda of Tomel. It's just to be able to go into Shabbos in the right spiritual mindset. So often we kind of like run into Mincha. You know, I'm just like so proud of myself that I managed to get both legs in my pants, you know, and my wallet, so my pen, you know, my phone's out. And all I've of time now is we should be a Shomer Erev Shabbos. So, you know, if there's incredible schar for being a Shomer Erev Shabbos, Allah has kama v'kama. There's a schar for being a Shomer Erev Shabbos. And that's Baruch Hashem. During this time of year, we have the ability to literally, if Ta'amah is makdim, it kind of brings in the Kedusha of Shabbos a little bit earlier. So then really what our Shir with the Rebbe does tonight, what the Torah with Piacezna does tonight, is it brings in Erev Shabbos a little bit earlier. And there's an avoda to bring in Erev Shabbos just a little bit earlier, because who amongst us isn't yearning to see the Shabbos Malchus, right? Who amongst us isn't yearning for the Shabbos Queen, and who amongst us isn't yearning to be enveloped in her embrace, and isn't yearning to just be overwhelmed by her Kedusha. You know, we have such difficult weeks and difficult times, and the matzah for Am Yisrael is still one that is so incredibly overwhelming, and over 120 of our brothers and sisters still being held captive, and we read the headlines and we read the reports about how many may be alive and how many are not alive, and the truth is the neshama just wants to push all of that out, because as a klal, the one thing that's always kept us afloat, even in the seas of incredible turbulence, is an unbridled and unquenchable and unconquerable sense of optimism, of hope. Yeshua Hashem Hashem could do anything. He could do anything. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu could go out and be Mechayim Meisif, and Hashem could bring the dead back to life. Then Allah has kama b'kama, He could sustain the living. So in these days and in this time, all the more so, how much we want to bring in Shabbos early, and I want it so badly. I want to bring in Erev Shabbos early. So you should know that's what we're doing in this year. You could learn Piacezna every night. Maybe we should learn Piacezna every night. But I think we all know that there's something special about learning the Piacezna on Thursday night, on Erev Shabbos, or maybe like tonight, Erev Shabbos Kodesh. The Rebbe helps us to bring Kedusha into our lives. The Rebbe helps us to actualize our own internal, inherent personal Kedusha. And I will say with that, let us begin. A beautiful, beautiful piece ahead of us tonight. I have sheets for whoever needs. Oh, the sponsors, I'm sorry, yes.
Shmuel and Robin Corrupt in honor of the engagement of their son David to Naomi Salo from LA.
Mazel tov.
Let's go. Yoni Frager in honor of his getting to learn the Piacezna Rebbe's teachings. The Silver, who is so extraordinary with her incredible chaburah.
And in honor of your column. Let's throw that in there.
That was my fault.
That's Leora. Okay.
Hot mic.
I got your back.
I can't come next week, so I was trying to sneak it in.
I got it.
I did that on purpose. And you weren't going to let it slide.
No, I was not going to let it slide. I was saying, tremendous shkut. What happened to all of our sweat? Okay. So let's begin. So we're doing tonight a really exceptional piece by the Rebbe. Hopefully we'll get through maybe even a couple. No, we won't. Okay. So
Sorry.
No. Chas Shalom. The shira is not like it's part of the avodah. The Rebbe said, "It says you have to start with the niggin. You can't learn with a chaburah without the niggin and without the l'chaim. So we're machmir. We have nigunim and l'chaim. You know, so Baruch Hashem. So we'll say. So let's begin. We're picking up tonight on the bottom of page Shin Lamed Gimel. In Yuchat Ha'echem Katola Kashela Galbinu. Bottom of page Shin Lamed Gimel. Section Yud Dalet. Section 14. So listen to what the Rebbe says. I think we may have begun this last week, but this is really one of these transformative pieces. Do you have enough? We have chairs. Yeah. Okay. So I will say. So look at the Piacezna writes. Cover. There should be more sheets if anyone needs over here. Good. So the Rebbe says as follows. So we'll say. I can't stress to you what an incredibly important piece this is by the Rebbe. In life, sometimes one of the hardest things to measure is growth. Am I growing? Am I growing or not? Am I growing or not? So how do you measure growth in life? So I want to measure myself. And to know, Imalisa, have I ascended? Have I ascended? Now I will say, descent is relatively easy to measure, right? I know exactly if I've descended. The shaila is, how can I measure if I've ascended? How could I know that? Or chas v'shalom again, have I ascended or have I descended in the last year or two? So the Rebbe says it's a very simple metric. Histakel birtzoncha, aval rak birtzoncha v'lo b'birchasecha. So the Rebbe says as follows. He says, look at your ratzon. Ratzon is the metric. Ratzon, we're going to define what ratzon is just about. Ratzon is the barometer for whether or not I am growing. So look at your ratzon. If your ratzon is there, if your ratzon is intact, then at the end of the day, that means that you are growing. But the Rebbe says, we haven't defined what ratzon means yet. Aval birtzoncha v'lo b'birchasecha. But make sure again you're looking at your ratzon, at your will, we'll call it your will, and not at birchasecha. Literally means what? Your brachos, so your blessings. Now we'll see exactly what that means in just a moment. Turn the page. I will say page Shin Lamed Daled. Kirak haratzon. So what is ratzon? So the Rebbe says essentially, and this is really very interesting, that the way I could tell whether or not I'm growing as an individual is not, the Rebbe says, by the number of hours that I'm learning, or for that matter, again, by the number of mitzvos that I'm doing, how much tzedakah that I'm giving. Those are all very important things. But the Rebbe posits that those are not the metric of what we'll call comprehensive growth. The metric of comprehensive growth is what is your ratzon? What is your will? Meaning what? Look at the Rebbe says, top of page Shin Lamed Daled. Hirak haratzon, sha'adam rotze v'oved biyegia, lavo le'iz davar. So I will say, see, here's what's interesting. We normally translate ratzon as your will. Your will. So what does your will represent? Your will represents those things that you want in life. Right? So my ratzon is, I want to be a Jew who davens with a minyan 3 times a day. That's my ratzon. Now, does that happen? Does that happen? No. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? I want to be a Jew. My ratzon is, I want to be a Jew who's careful of Shmiras Hayom with what he looks at. Does that happen? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The Rebbe says that's not ratzon. He says ratzon is rak haratzon sha'adam rotze va'oved biyegia lavo le'iz davar. Ratzon is not simply an aspirational state of being. Ratzon doesn't represent something that you want. Ratzon represents something you want and you are working towards it. Look at that, Rosie. You hear this lashon? My ratzon is not just, okay, I wish I was this, I wish I was this, I wish I was this, I wish I did this, I wish I didn't do this. That's not ratzon. Ratzon ultimately are the things that you want and that you are actively working towards them. Ratzon, he says, ratzon, that's called ratzon. That's called ratzon. He says, so what do you call it in life when you want something, but you're not willing to work on it? Steve, give me a favor. Can you shut off? You shut off. Just yeah. I think it's the right one over here. See, he says over here. We'll turn it back on in just a moment. It says Vim, or maybe just even push it up a degree. It says Vim ena oved bo afim rotzuhu. Now again, if you want something, but at the end of the day, you're not willing to work for it. Actually, no, Steve, just leave it because it's probably going to get too hot. Sorry. All right, chaburah, the air conditioning dedication of the new building is still open. It's going to run silent. It's going to run silent. It's forced air. It's going to run very. I'm sorry.
We're so excited. We kept the ice off.
Yeah, thank you. It's like the Satan. The Satan is always here, trying to do something. All right.
Tonight, there's no.
That's a big clump of ice over there, no? Many percent bag of ice. Okay, so ratzon represents those things that you want and that you are willing to work for. But if there's something quote unquote that you want, but you're not willing to work for it, ein ze ratzon. That's not called ratzon. Rak min birchas halev shemevarich uma'achal li'atzmo li'asher bazeh hadavar. So what do you call something when you want it, but you're not willing to work for it? So the Piacezna, a wish, right? A wish, a dream, or again, I think using the Piacezna, an aspirational blessing. It's something that I want out of life. And he's going to give some examples. This is just a moment. So Ratzon represents the things that I want and that I'm willing to work for. So everything else, bless you, everything else ultimately, again, is simply an aspirational want, an aspirational wish, an aspirational blessing. It's things that I'd like out of life, but I'm absolutely unwilling to put in any effort towards it. He says, he gives an incredible example. He says, Ha'ani lamashal. For example, let's say a person is poor. A person is poor. They have no money. So what happens? Harot shetila parnasa. So we'll say, what does the ani want more than anything? What does the ani want more than anything? Money. We'll say, it's a very important yisod, right? You know, one of the beautiful aspects of Yiddishkeit is the realness with which we approach life. There's a recognition that the Rebbe Shalom understands, Chazal understand, that in Ein Kemach, Ein Torah is not just like a pitch for Jewish organizations. Right? In Ein Kemach, Ein Torah is a yisod in life. That if I can't pay my bills, and my parnasa and my livelihood is not intact, there's almost absolutely no bandwidth for spirituality. That's the way that it works. And that's why, by the way, I've mentioned this before. For example, we read it just not so long ago in Parshas B'chu Kosai. Parshas B'chu Kosai, remember again, the Torah says, In B'chu Kosai T'leichel mitzvasai tishmoru. If you listen to my mitzvahs, if you learn my Torah, so what does the Kadosh Baruch Hu promise us? Kadosh Baruch Hu promises us material blessing. So the Arach Chaim HaKadosh says, I don't understand, why... We always have this concept of schar mitzvah hay al maleko. There's no reward in mitzvos in this world. We have Antigonus who says, don't be like servants who worship the master for the sake of receiving, or altiu kavodim hamisham shnes v'amanasa kalapras. And yet here the Torah itself says, if you do the mitzvahs, I'm going to give you all of this reward: wheat and grain and calves and sheep and all this kind of stuff. Rain. So what's the pshat? The Chaim says, no, you got it all wrong. It's not a reward. It's not a reward. What the Baruch Hu is saying is that if you decide to pick Team God, right, and you decide to go ahead and be fully and wholly committed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll help you further your commitment. How does Hashem help us further our commitment to spirituality? By removing material obstacles. So if I know that I have money in the bank, I know that I can pay, I don't mean becoming fabulously wealthy, but I mean like I can pay my bills, I'm financially afloat, I'm good. Then there's room. To be able to focus on the Ribono Shalom. When I'm stressed, so he says the ani. What is the? It's interesting. So he doesn't say what does the ani want more. The ani doesn't want to be a Talmid Chacham. That's actually, maybe he wants that later on. The ani wants something very simple. The ani wants money. I'm tired of being poor. I just want to have money. I just want that I can take care of myself and my family. So watch this. He says Rotzonhu Kevan Shegam Over Alel. So for example, for the ani. Acquiring money is a ratzon. Why is it a ratzon? Right? Why is it a ratzon? Because A, it's something he wants, and he's willing to work for it. He's going to get a job. He's willing to take any job. He's willing to take multiple jobs. So that's a ratzon. Now I will say, now watch this. On the other hand, aval ratzon sheyish lo sheyimtza mitzia shel elef alofim dinar zav. Now I'll say, let me contemporize this. I'll say, like when they have these incredible like mega jackpot, drawings like this, parables, right? Like $50 billion, right? And you buy your ticket. You buy nothing wrong with buying. You can buy a ticket. It's good, right? You buy your ticket, right? And it's so interesting, right? Before you bought the ticket, whatever, I don't care. Something interesting happens when you buy the ticket, which is what? I've spent it, actually. I've spent it. In other words, I know how I'm going to go ahead and deal with my new $50 billion. I've got it all taken out to the point that, like, when you don't win, it's like, oh, man, I can't, what a letdown, right? Before I bought the ticket, there was no havamina. I got the ticket. So the Rebbe says, everybody dreams of this, like, miraculous windfall that occurs with absolutely no effort, right? The money just, so the ani, it's not just the ani who dreams about, right? Even people who aren't ani and dream about like that possibility of just running in to like, what do they call it? God money? Is that like an expression like that? God money? Just like a lot of money? Okay, maybe I mean, all right, whatever. All right, whatever. Yeah, I know I didn't make that up. I'm probably just misusing it. More money than God. Okay, so maybe that's it. Hey, that's it. Okay, so whatever. So we'll say, so the Piacezna says, that's not ratzon. Why is that not ratzon? I'm not doing anything for it. Oh, I got it. I bought the ticket. That's fine. That's fine, right? And I was going for the Slurpee anyway, right? You know, so I'm saying like Lamaisa, there's no effort in that. There's no effort. So it's interesting because you can have this same dialectic in the same person. So on one hand, the ani who wants to make money, his ratzon is to make money. That ratzon is manifest in the fact that he's willing to put in effort. But then there's a part of him that has like these wishes, these dreams, these, blessing-filled aspirations of like stumbling into a ridiculous amount of money that he didn't do anything to earn, but kind of just fell into his lap. So the Rebbe says, Zehu rak bracha shemevarich uma'achalo. This asheri, that's almost like a bracha he's giving himself. Like I hope, right? I hope that this happens. I hope that I stumble into this money. V'lo ratzon. But that's not ratzon. I will say, this is an incredible thing, because I want to tell you, here's what the Piacezna say. I will say, how many times in life do we ask ourselves the question? One of the big things in his boat, the Rebbe spoke about this, and I think contemporarily we have so little time for this in the hectic pace of our lives, is the concept of his bodidus, of being alone with oneself, being alone with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I will say, in those moments of his bodidus, a person asks themselves, like, what do I want out of life? It's good to ask yourself, what do I want out of life? So it's interesting because I think very often when we ask that question, there's a whole list, all good and beautiful things. The Piacezna says, that's not what you want out of life. What you want out of life is, what are the things that I want and I'm willing to work for? Those are the things you really want out of life. The other stuff is just pie in the sky. The other stuff is just wishes and dreams and aspirational items. The things that you really want are the things that, yes, you want and you're willing to work for. If you want it and you're not willing to work for it, that's a wish, a dream, a beautiful blessing, aspiration. But that's not a ratzon. We'll say, right? Imagine just for a moment taking this definition and now each of us like taking a few moments like to introspect and to think about, wow, like I say I want shalom bayis, right? I want a good marriage. Okay? Am I working hard for that? Or my parnasa? I say that I want to be successful. Am I working to be successful? I say that I want to love to learn. Am I pushed? It's just interesting when you begin to ask the questions, because I think very often, I remember that 2 years ago I was speaking to a group of 10th graders. Boys were struggling a little bit. And good, sweet, neshamadik boys. And I'm just talking, and I said to one of the boys, I said, like, tell me, like, what's your goal for yourself? Like, what do you want? And this boy said to me, and he said, I want to want. I want to want. And at first when I heard it, I was like, wow, that is beautiful. And then I said, that is absolutely ridiculous. Right? You want to want to want? So by the way, double wanting, right? The definition of double wanting is not wanting, right? In other words, I want to want, but really I'm not actually ready to do anything to back up that even want to want. So in other words, and here's what's interesting is, we do this all the time in life. We content ourselves, we make ourselves feel good by saying, look, at least, my heart's in the right place. Like, I really want to daven. I really want to learn, right? In other words, like, if the planets align and atmospheric pressure was perfect and it was 68.7 degrees with a northeasterly wind at about 4 knots, right? And all these things, and the minyan was faster, the minyan was slower, the minyan was this, my tefillin was Rabbeinu Tam was here next to me, whatever it is, right? I have all of it, if all of it, but of course I want it. Piacezna says, stop. Be honest. The things that you really want out of life are the things you're willing to work for. And if you're not willing to work for it, then you don't really want it. You don't really want it. Now again, you may dream about it, right? You may dream about it. It might be this beautiful thing which is, by the way, I want to point out, it's beautiful to dream about spiritual things, even if you're not doing anything about them. At least you're dreaming about those things. That's still a mailah. But don't claim that you want it if you're not trying to do anything about it. Let's go on. He says, this is beautiful. He says, for example, hey, yesh l'chol ish Yisrael yiratzon sheyeh tzaddik. This is beautiful. It says every yid wants to be a tzaddik, right? Every yid wants to be a tzaddik. Aval zeu rak bracha shemevarich liatzmo sheyashkim baboker v'yimtzo es atzmo tzaddik. Okay, so what do I say, right? When I say that I want to be a tzaddik, what am I really saying? What am I really saying? What I'm really saying is, you know what? Here's what I want to do is, I want to go to sleep tonight, one person, and tomorrow morning, right? I'm like, Hineni muchan umazuman. I will say, you ever had this? You know, you can relate to this. I can relate to this. Is, you know, like something's like if you're sick, and you're feeling terrible, and you go to sleep at night, right? And what's the one tefillah that you go to sleep with on your lips? I hope I wake up tomorrow morning, like just feeling okay. And you know that moment, like right before you open your eyes, and you're like, okay, right? All right, let's see, right? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I'm feeling it, right? Things feel like they're okay. Sometimes we do this in spirituality also, right? I went to sleep last night like a Rasha, mamish like a Rasha, right? But I decided, you know what? Like this morning, this is the morning that I am ready to wake up as a tzaddik. Like, I'm ready for it. I'm really ready for it. So the Rebbe says so beautifully. Now, I just want to point out, it is beautiful to want to be a tzaddik. That is beautiful. Most of the world doesn't want to be a tzaddik. So it's beautiful to want that. But the Piacezna says, really what I'm saying is, I want it, but I don't want to work for it. So in other words, I want the result, but I'm absolutely, wholly, and totally uninterested in the effort involved. V'lo zeh ratzon. That's just not called ratzon. That's just not called ratzon. V'rak hamadrega umatzav kedusha sha'adam rotze v'ovei lavo eleha zeh ratzon b'emes. It is, again, it's being a little bit repetitive. Only the things that you really are willing to work for, those are the things that are your ratzon. The other things that you want, right, but you're not willing to work for, those are your dreams, your aspirations, maybe even your goals, but it's not your ratzon. It's not your ratzon. So we'll say, now watch this. Next paragraph. It says, v'lachein, haratzon habilti amiti, Tamid yochol lios godla harbe ma'od. He says, lachein haratzon habilti amiti. Therefore, if a person, unfortunately, is plagued with disingenuous ratzon. So again, I'll say, I want to be clear. We're not talking here about a person who's bad. Right? This is a lot of times in life. This is our isn't it our greatest challenge in life to have beautiful, lofty goals? And I want it. I really want it. But at the end of the day, I'm just not willing to work for it. I'm just not willing to put. I know that I want the result. By the way, there's something beautiful about that. I want the result, but I'm not willing to put in the work. So the Rebbe says, when a person is plagued by a ratzon bilti amiti, a ratzon that's not genuine, tami yachol lios gadol harbe ma'od, ubechol matzavim sha'ish nimsa, yachol ritzon lios b'mida achos, ledalek ula'achel lo limso hon rav. Oh, bein rega letzadik miromam mod yasa. So again, the beautiful part is with disingenuous ratzon, you could delude yourself into thinking that instantaneous change or instantaneous accomplishment is attainable, right? And I will say, and in certain respects and at certain times and for certain things it is, but not when it comes to this. A person could delude themselves into thinking that wanting the right things out of life is enough. And as long as I want the right things, even if I'm not doing the right things or acting upon that, that's enough. He says, Lo kin haratzon amiti. Now let's say, here's the difference. When you deal with real ratzon, he says, haratzon asher im avoda. Real ratzon, I will say, again, in the Piacezna's world, if you say that you have a ratzon, that you have a will for something, that means you want it and you're working for it. Ratzon is always accompanied by avoda, by effort. Lo medaleg rak hutzoed. So I will say, it's interesting. In the dream world, in the aspirational dream and wish world, you could get from point A to point B like that, right? One jump, right? One wish, and suddenly again you're from point A to point B. In the world of ratzon, in the world of real ratzon, there's no such thing as jumping. There's only taking steps. There's effort. And effort means step after step after step. Tzoed tza'ad al matzav va'avoda yosem rima. Step by step, I'm propelling myself higher and higher to some heightened or elevated level of avodas Hashem. Rak asher b'daito v'hachlatas lahosif. And my goal is to keep going. My goal is to keep moving with every single step. Ubishvil zeh kafi matzavo shala'ish kach ritzono. Now I will say, obviously, in this respect, Ratzon is going to be different for every person, right? Depending on where I'm holding in life. So I'll say for one person, their Ratzon, and this is actually interesting, for one person, their Ratzon may manifest itself in exhibiting self-control and not doing something. Right? I struggle with a particular aveira, so now I have a desire to stop sinning. So therefore, how is my ratzon going to manifest itself? How does that desire manifest itself? I'm going to abstain. I'm going to hold myself back. I'm going to exercise self-control. And then there's another person for, my ratzon is, I want to become a tremendous Talmid Chacham. And so for me, I'm adding in an extra hour of learning for my days. The Piacezna just says, there's no one form or one model of ratzon. He's saying, but there's a concept that if you say you want something out of life, you really only want it, if at the end of the day you're willing to work for it. But if you're not willing to work for it, then you don't really want it. I would say it's a little bit of like a difficult pill to swallow, because I think we all struggle with this in different ways. There are many things we say that we want, but yet if we're honest, haven't really done the work on it in a very long time, if ever. But Lamaisa again, but yet the Piacezna says that's the definition of ratzon. Yes. About committing it to writing. So that's an excellent point. So he doesn't do it over here in Tzav v'Zeiros, but he does do it in B'nei Machshava Tova. Absolutely. The idea of creating, you have to appreciate something. Remember, both sides. It's always important to reinforce this. Tzav v'Zeiros is the Piacezna's journal. Right? This wasn't really written this was written for the Rebbe. This was his personal spiritual journal. So you see, obviously the Rebbe feels the need to write something down. But yes, to write down your ratzon, what are the things you want out of life? And even more, what's your plan to be able to get there? Absolutely. He doesn't say it here, but he says in other svarim. Absolutely. So let's finish up. So the Rebbe says as follows: Ubishil zek kfi matzavo shel ish kach ratzono im katan hu kam ratzono katan. So I say sometimes, again, the quote-unquote, the smaller I am in life. What does it mean, the smaller? In other words, the lower of a level that I am, so the lower my ratzon. I will say, in other words, and there's nothing wrong with that. In other words, if I'm, quote-unquote, beginning on my spiritual journey, my ratzon doesn't have to be a great Talmid Chacham. It doesn't have to be. Maybe my ratzon is, I don't know, to learn 10 minutes of Torah a day, to keep Shabbos, to do them, to whatever it is. Everybody. The point of Piacezna says, and this is incredible, Piacezna is not telling us what to do over here, right? He's not saying this should be your ratzon, and this is what you should focus on, and this is what you should do. He's not saying this. He said that's very personal. What he's just saying is, like so much of Chassidus, is just be honest with yourself. And don't walk around life pretending that you want all these grand and lofty things when you're not really doing anything about them. Because if you really want something in life, then do something about it. The avodah has to be there. And therefore, I will say, as I progress in life, my ratzon progresses as well. I'll say, just to appreciate this, you could relate to all this a lot of times, like in Gashmi, also like in our material lives. I'll say, like, think about for a moment in your life. We're doing a lot of thinking, a lot of exercises tonight. Right? So think about for a moment in your life where, like, you bought something that was a luxury item, right? And you acknowledge to yourself that this is a luxury item. I know I don't need it, but I want it, right? And I'm being financially responsible and I have it. Fine, you buy it. And I'll say, what happens 3 days after that purchase, right? That luxury now becomes a necessity. So now suddenly again, right, the model shifts. So right? And it's interesting, sometimes like when I look back in my life, like when I was young, things that I felt like would never matter to me, or things that I didn't think I would ever really need, I took that step, this would be nice. And then suddenly the thing that was nice now becomes a necessity. A necessity. I'm not talking about overindulgence in materialism, just mean this is all from the derech. The good news is the same thing happens in spirituality in a positive way. So what ends up happening is like this: when I'm a katan, my ratzon is katan. My ratzon is small. And then Baruch Hashem, as I build up my katan, right, my ratzon muscle, and I become greater, and I become bigger, zeh katan gadol yihiyah, right? I transform from a katan to a gadol. So suddenly something beautiful happens, which is my ritzonos, my ratzon, right, grows also. So suddenly again now the things I want out of life and my willingness to work for them expands as well. So let's finish off this section. I both say, now here's the clincher. So remember again, let's go full circle. Still have a couple of minutes. Let's go full circle. I didn't think, did Tzvi make the food tonight? Where's Tzvi?
said he wasn't going to be able to make it.
Okay, all right. So, Chaver, just if you see Tzvi Friedman over Shabbos, make sure to thank him for the beautiful and delicious spread tonight. Incredible. Getting back to basics. Right, Shalom. That's it's me, Haimish. Yeah. Although I don't know if they had coleslaw on the Alterheim. I don't know. Did they have, I don't know. In Piacezna, did they have coleslaw with the Shalom?
Definitely.
Cabbage, right? Definitely had cabbage, right? True. Okay, we got to find a different name for it. Okay, anyway, I digress. Okay, so let's get back on track over here. So remember again. Let's come full circle. Let's go. Yeah, I did this. It's a very easily distractible group over here. Yes, yeah. So let's come full circle. So how did we start? How did we start this? So the Piacezna says, I want to figure out, am I growing in life or not? Am I growing? So what's the metric for growth? So the Piacezna says, look at your ratzon. Look at your ratzon. Right? So in other words, so remember again, his lashon over here was, he says, histakel bertzoncha. Look at your ratzon, and your ratzon is the indicator. Your ratzon is the litmus test as to whether or not you are experiencing spiritual growth in this world, in this life. Now, watch this. This, I have to tell you, I think is a pretty shocking surprise twist in this entire piece. And this is how the Piacezna says, Me'ata, imrotze ata, lifchonis atzmecha, v'lamonis matzavcha. So now, Piacezna says, fine. So now you understand that what you really want out of life, your real ratzon, are the things you're willing to work for. So now you want to test yourself. You want to apply this. Am I growing in life or not? Am I growing or not? How do I decide that? Histakel bertzoncha. Get ready for this. Look at the things that you want out of life. He says, Lifnei shana oshnasayim umatir tza'ata. Look at the things you wanted out of life a year or two ago, and look at what you want now. Im shavim heim, if they are the same. Oh, histareya v'niskado ritzoncha. Or ultimately, again, has your ratzon expanded? Has your ratzon expanded? V'zehaos shagam ata baruch Hashem alisa. Shabbos says, so this is incredible. The Piacezna says the metric of spiritual success is not really manifest in how much more you're doing. This is interesting. I will say, we know this. One of the greatest struggles we often encounter in our Yiddishkeit is I'm doing so much, but sometimes feeling so little. Right? I'm living a life of Shulchan Aruch. Right? I'm keeping all of the mitzvahs to the best of my ability. Right? I'm doing what Hakadosh Baruch Hu asks of me. So why? But I'm not feeling anything. So we know you could do a lot. You could do a lot, but doing a lot does not necessarily mean you're leading a spiritually successful life. I'm leading a halachic life, which is incredibly important, but not necessarily spiritually successful. So the Rebbe says we measure success by ratzon. What are the things that you want out of life and you're working to make happen? Are those the same things you wanted a year and 2 years ago? Or do you have things from a year or two that you were successful on and you moved on and you've grown into something else as well? Because if I'm still having, I just want to point something out. Sometimes there are certain beautiful things where I'm supposed to maintain the same ratzon for a prolonged amount of time, right? For example, if my ratzon is to be a Talmid Chacham, I might be working on that for 30 years, right? I might be working on that for 120 years. My ratzon is to try to be a good spouse. That could be a lifetime of work, a good parent life. So, again, obviously there are certain things where the ratzon remains the entire time. But in general, the Piacezna says there always should be new elements in the things you want out of life. And if there's nothing new in the ratzon bucket, and again, remember, ratzon being defined not as the things you simply want, but the things that you want and are willing to work for. If it's the same list, like Reb Zev said before, right? I took out my diary and I wrote down. And now again, if I'm comparing my list, and my list from today is the same list as 2 years ago, there's something missing. There's something missing. I am not spiritually successful. And again, I want to be clear. Lack of spiritual success in no way means sinfulness, right? And in no way means rishus or evil. Chas v'shalom, right? We're talking all good people over here, right? This is all good stuff. All good stuff. Nobody's doing any averos, right? We're living lives of the Ratzon Hashem. But at the end of the day, the shaila is, in my list of ritzonos, of things that I want and willing to work for, have I stagnated? Have I plateaued? Have I leveled out? So if what I want out of life now is the same thing I wanted out of life a year or two ago, the Piacezna says that's not a successful life. Again, could be a good life. I want to be a good life, a nice life, but it's not a successful life. So essentially, if we put this all together, the Piacezna says that there are two metrics of success. And this is, by the way, this is incredibly empowering, Rabbi, because I think so many times we go through life and I know that I'm doing the right things. I'm doing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. I have no idea if I'm successful. I have no idea if I'm successful or not. I will say, no, I think a lot of us encounter this like in our career also, right? Where I know I'm doing a job. Am I succeeding in my job? I know that I'm executing my tasks, right? I know maybe even I'm getting a raise or a good performance review. Am I succeeding in my career? Am I advancing? Am I making a difference? And so many of us struggle with that day in and day out. So the Piacezna says it's the same thing in Ruchnius. If I'm doing the same stuff now as I was doing a year or two ago, even though, again, you might say, 1 second, that's actually pretty good, right? In other words, if I'm not backsliding, right, and I'm not losing ground, sometimes, and that's true, sometimes in life, success is holding your ground. That is absolutely true, especially when a person is undergoing difficulties or adversities and challenges. Holding the line sometimes can be the most resounding success. But that can't be total success. Total success means when I look at my ritzonos from 2 years ago or a year ago, and I look at what I'm doing today is a much more robust list. Today is simply greater level of aspirations. Again, ratzon. So come, let me finish with this. Two-pronged metric of success. Number one, make your list. What are the things you want out of life? But again, be careful what you put on the list. Because again, remember, you're going to write down a whole list of things you want out of life. Then what are you going to have to do? That's step one. Write down everything. Right? Write down everything. What's next? Next is take out another piece of paper. On the top of one piece of paper, you have to write ratzon. On another type of paper, you're going to have to write dreams/wishes/aspirations. Okay? How do you know which goes on which list? Dreams/wants, wishes, aspirations are things that you want, but you are not doing anything about it, which probably means that the lion's share of stuff on the first piece of paper is going to be moved over to the second piece of paper. And now, whatever is left afterwards, the things that I want and I'm willing to do work for, that's my ratzon. So now I'll say step one is identify what are the real things you want out of life. By definition, the things you're willing to work for. That's step one. And step number two is, okay, now get working on those things. Keep working on those things. And at some point in time, make a new list without looking at the old list. And then take the new list, put it next to the old list, and compare them. And what do they look like when they are matched side by side? If they're the same, they have opposites, there may be something missing. There may be a certain level of plateauing, a certain level of flatlining, a certain level of stagnation. But if you see that list number two, right, contemporary list, is somehow holier, more expanded, more beautiful, more courageous, more aggressive than list number one, then that is the telltale sign of a spiritually successful life. All right, what a piece. What a piece. And Meretz Hashem, share next week. What's next week? Yeah. Yoni Frager, why aren't you going to be here? Was you offer for something?
Yeah.
What are you cooking?
I have a lot of people coming in and they...
Bring them.
What?
Bring them. We'll make another pot challenge.
Yeah. I'm going to be wearing somebody else's name on the back of my shirt. Which is hilarious. Because that was a reference from your last cycle.
That's right.
And the funniest thing in the world is that we laugh at those people who put their names on the back.